Ladies and gentlemen, this is a perfect time to make sure all cell phones are turned off for the service.
Welcome, everyone, to this funeral service for our beloved Irwin Wagner. Things before we begin, we are streaming this service. However, our internet is down. So those of you who are watching online, there may be intermittent dropouts because we're using cell service. If for whatever reason it does go down, we are also recording this, and once our internet is back up, we will post it on the Feldman Mortuary YouTube page in its entirety. So we apologize for any technical glitches that may occur with streaming in advance. So we are gathered here in our grief, in our love, in our support of this family, to bid farewell to a remarkable soul. And we will do so with music, with prayer, with Torah. I'm going to begin with the 121st.
Psalm 121. I lift my eyes to the mountains. What is the source of my help? My help comes from Adonai, maker of heaven and earth. God will not let your foot give way, and your protector will not slumber. See, the protector of Israel neither slumbers nor sleeps. God is your guardian, your protection at your right hand. The sun will not strike you by day, nor the moon by night. And Adonai will guard your soul, your going and your coming, now and forever.
Death has taken beloved Irwin Wagner, and our friends grieve in the darkened world. In silence, there is lamentation, in their tears, there is loneliness, lost. In their sorrow, may they find the presence of loving friends. Hear them, O God. Be with them. For Irwin's love that united us in life, and which death cannot sever, for his companionship that we shared along life's path and which continues with the tenderness of memory, for the gifts of his heart and mind that brought us joy and happiness, and is now precious remembrance, for his brilliance, for his mentoring, for his learning, for his teaching, for his wry sense of humor, for his questions, and his questions, and his questions. Not so much in search of an answer, but to make sure that we all were thinking and seeing the world through his unique perspective. For all these and more, we give our thanks to God. And in this time of grief, we listen to the voice of our sacred scripture that brings us the ever new message of God's nearness, that tells of our kinship with the Creator. In light as in darkness, in joy as in sorrow, in life as in death. You know, I thought about texts that would reflect Irwin's remarkable life, and the first psalm truly encapsulates so much. The psalmist writes, happy are those who have not followed the counsel of the wicked, or taken the path of sinners, or joined the company of the insolent, but rather the teaching of God is their delight, and they study that teaching day and night. They are like a tree planted beside streams of water that yields its fruit in season, whose foliage never fades, whose fruit always flourishes. And the 23rd Psalm, which over the centuries has brought so much comfort to so many, and its message of walking on a journey through the valley of the shadow of death, not being stuck in that valley, but along that journey. That is your path to walk, from which you will emerge. But you walk now, and we walk with you. I want to invite Cantor Sachs back up on the bima to chant the 23rd Psalm in Hebrew, and then I'll read the English. Some of you have the text in front of you. If not, that's okay. If you know the English, join with me. Read the bits and pieces. Cantor.
Your mistake,
God is my shepherd, I shall not want. God makes me lie down in green pastures, leads me beside still waters, and restores my soul. You lead me in right paths for the sake of your name. Even when I walk in the valley of the shadow of death, I shall fear no evil, for you are with me. Your rod and your staff, they comfort me. You have set a table before me in the presence of my enemies. You have anointed my head with oil, my cup runs over. Surely goodness and mercy shall follow me all the days of my life, and I shall dwell in the house of God forever.
In just a moment, we are going to sing an interpretation of the Haftarah. Prayer talks about what does it mean to love God. Now, as Rabbi Black mentioned, and as many of you probably experienced, there was sometimes a strength and maybe a misconstrued prickliness about Irwin. And I remember for many, many months, he would come to a Talmud class that I taught here at Temple. And after about 5 months, I had to have a gentle conversation with him about how vigorously he argued with the other people in the Talmud class. And the truth is that Irwin was almost embarrassed and about being misconstrued as being harsh. Because as he reflected to me, in a quote from another famous Jewish text, iron sharpens iron, he said. I argue with them to make them stronger. It comes from a place of love. And the truth is, that really was what was motivating him, is love. Love of his tradition, love of the argument sometimes, but this great sense that with his intellect, he was displaying his great passion for his tradition and his great love of God. And so for him and for you, sing this. Love your with all your heart, with all your strength, with all your soul. Love your God with all your heart, with all your mind, with all your soul. Where you live, where you love, where you stumble, where you thrive, with all you speak, with with all your soul. Be like God, more like God, in love and life. Be like God, love like God, with all your heart, with all your might, with all your soul. When you see, when you sow, when you breathe and breathe no more, love your God, be with God, go with God. Love your God with all your heart, with all your strength, with all your soul. Be with God, one like God, go with God, love your God, be with
Just a few moments ago, members of the family performed the ritual of Kriya, tearing a ribbon, express grief. Some of the words that we said were Adonai Natan v'Adonai Lakach Yishim Adonai Mevorach, echoing the words of Job. God has given, God has taken away. Blessed is the name of God. Hard words to say. In ancient people, we are well acquainted with grief in the Valley of Shadows. Death and sorrow are not strangers to us, and yet the centuries have taught us that the Keter Shem Tov, the crown of a good name, endures beyond the grave, that there is strength and faith. So in Job we say, Adonai Natan, God, you have given. You gave us Irwin Wagner, who will not be forgotten, and for all that was good and enduring in Irwin's life, we offer the deepest thanks of our hearts. Adonai Lakach, and God, you have taken away. We pray for strength. Turn our broken hearts into an altar of trust before which we acknowledge your sovereignty and love as we now say, Yishem Adonai Mevorach Me'atav Olam. Blessed be the name of God now and forever. And finally, these words from the book of Ecclesiastes. For everything there is a season, a time for every experience under heaven, a time to be born, a time to die, a time to plant, a time to uproot what is planted, a time to tear down, a time to build up, a time to weep and a time to laugh, a time to grieve and a time to dance, a time to throw stones, a time to gather stones, a time to embrace and a time to refrain from embracing, a time for seeking, time for losing, time for keeping and discarding, for tearing and sowing, time for silence and time for speaking. And now is both a time for silence and a time for speaking. Now is a time for holding on to memories, for lessons that were taught, for questions that were asked, for love that was embraced. Remember Irwin. Now is also a time for speaking, for sharing the gifts that we received from a remarkable human being. us now silent prayer.
We think about what it is to lose someone we love. We know that their memories and their presence will always be a light for us, a guiding light for how we want to live our lives, a light to remember fun and funny times we had, and a light to comfort us when we have our own scars. So in that spirit, offer this prayer of the brightness of Irwin's light, and how we will always look to the sky for his presence and remember what he gives back to us. There are stars up above, so far away we only see their light. Not long after the star itself is gone. And so it is with people that we love. Their memories keep shining ever brightly, though their time with us is done. But the stars that light up the darkest night, these are the lights that guide us as we live our days. These are the ways we remember. We remember as we live our days. These are the ways we remember. We remember. Yesh kochavim shalom ha'yarza, bar kasher ha'atzma tuvena. Yesh anashim shezim zichron meir, kasher ha'atzma bena, oh ketucheinu. Oh, Taylor,
We're going to invite up for down space. First Rachel, and then Ty, and then Gary to share some thoughts on Irwin.
On my cousin Daniel's bar mitzvah trip to Costa Rica, Papa encountered sloths. He loved the majesty of such a slow-moving animal with so little purpose in life. We discussed it many times, and I always thought of him as a sloth. So naturally, my Jewish self walked into a tattoo parlor and said, "I'll have one sloth with Lador Vador underneath it in Hebrew, please." I tested him a little bit, and he loved it. I wanted to have his slow-moving wisdom with me wherever I went. My parents weren't happy about it, but I did it anyway, just like he taught me. Growing up, I would go to Grandma and Papa's house a lot, but a lot of my time was spent with my grandmother. But Papa and I's relationship changed, and we became closer as I got older. We went to lunch pretty frequently ever since I was in middle school. We would order appetizers, entrees, and ice cream. I would eat at a normal pace, and he would sit there for 2.5 hours, going on about whatever his interests were happening, and shoveling cashew nuts stir-fried with shrimp into his mouth occasionally. He told me about his childhood and how nice his mother was, his mischief as a young man, his experience as a husband, father, and grandfather. But then he would turn to me and say, "So what's going on in your life?" I would tell him about school and my parents and whatnot, but that's not at all what he wanted to hear. He wanted to hear about the inner workings of my mind and why I am the way I am. We would talk ad nauseum about anxiety, duty, purpose, happiness, fulfillment, and what makes life worth living. Sometimes he would give me good advice, like slowing down and engaging with what life has to offer. And sometimes he would tell me not to listen to my parents and learn to play billiards. He also gave me a lot of self-confidence when I didn't have much. He would laugh at my jokes and tell me everything would be okay. He was my friend when I didn't have many. Papa and I were kindred spirits in a lot of ways. Our endless gushing never fazed the other, and our jokes were never funny to anyone else. He was truly one of my best friends. Our friendship blossomed in the last 3 years of his life. I went through some hard times, and he was always there to take me to lunch and talk about whatever was on my mind. Or he would talk about the things on his mind, and I would let him go for as long as he wanted. I don't consider myself a particularly patient person, but I would let Papa talk about whatever he wanted for as long as he wanted. And I would truly listen, because I admired him more than almost anyone else. I always found him so funny and eccentric, even in his most stubborn moments. I loved how he took his Kindle to services and sat in the back row. I loved how he was so open with me, and I loved his sweet tooth. He always had a pint of ice cream in the freezer, or a few, much to the chagrin of my grandmother. It was very endearing to me, so for his 85th birthday, I made him a big chocolate banana peanut butter cake. And when I brought it to him, his eyes lit up like a kid in a candy store. I don't know how I feel about the afterlife, but if there is such a thing, I hope Papa gets all of the ice cream and cake that he wants. He deserves it.
Thanks, Rachel. Before I start, I just want to say I have incredible siblings, incredible cousins, and a really, really amazing family. And I want to thank everyone for coming. Truly, thank you so much for coming to remember Papa with us. I first discovered that Papa was cooler than all the other grandfathers when I was 8 years old. Growing up, Kale and I were lucky enough to have regular sleepovers at our grandparents' house. This meant games, movies, and dreams of the morning Fruit Loops. I can't overstate how much I look forward to those Fruit Loops. The day Papa began to separate himself from all the other Papas was the day I brought over my treasured PlayStation for the first time. When I set the system up, Papa immediately started to ask questions. What does that button do? How do you know where the players are going to go? What other kinds of games are there? The next time I went over, I was surprised to find a new GameCube system sitting in the basement. Even more to my surprise, Papa not only knew how to plug the system in, but already had a favorite game to teach me. I reveled in sitting next to each other, solving these puzzles as a team. Papa fulfilled with more traditional duties as well, teaching me how to mark a strikeout at the countless Rockies games we watched in section 136, row 17, and cheering me on at sports, music, and speech events from Denver all the way to Washington, D.C. But I definitely didn't know any other Papas who knew how to play video games. This was quite the schoolyard forever. As I grew older, the puzzles Papa and I worked on became more complex. At seemingly any family function, birthdays, high holidays, Shabbat, Papa and I would conspire to take any meal and turn it into an intellectual battlefield. Together, we would twist and stretch a political or philosophical debate far beyond the patience of almost everyone else at the table. We loved it. Eventually, we learned that everyone was better off when we took our verve for questioning to our own individual lunches. In my early 20s, my mental health began to fail. Papa, like a lot of loving people in my life, was worried. But unlike a lot of people who get worried, Papa never panicked. He prided himself on a loving brand of stoicism that rests on the principles of acceptance, contemplation, and clarity. This stoicism allowed Papa to solve problems and unravel puzzles without the fear that stifles so many of us. This wasn't a skill Papa simply had. It was a creed that he practiced each day through study, meditation, and finally, after enough deliberation, sometimes more deliberation than the rest of us could imagine, action. When Papa saw me struggling, he extended an invitation. Would I like to study something together? He suggested a book called Letters to a Young Poet by Rainier Marie Rilke, a collection of letters that Rilke wrote to a young person seeking his advice. I accepted. These weekly study sessions were the first time I was truly invited into Papa's inner world. Papa had struggled in his life too. He had been depressed, felt lost, and experienced fear. And yet here he was, the proud owner of a meaningful life. Using Rilke, he directed my attention to a sober idea. But ultimately, I did not rely on anyone or anything outside of myself for direction. Papa believed that only by turning inward, going deep inside oneself during quiet moments, would I be able to find a meaningful path. Rilke writes, find out the reason that commands you. Whether it is spread its roots into the very depths of your heart, confess to yourself whether you would have to die if you were forbidden to do it. Dig into yourself for a deep answer. If you meet the solemn question with a strong, simple I must, then build your life in accordance with this necessity. Papa told me that the best investment he ever made wasn't during his impressive financial career, but in the home in himself he created to do this deep work. In Irwin's incredible life, he was a son, a brother, a husband, a dad, an entrepreneur, a counselor, a philanthropist, a Jew, and of course, a Papa. But towards the end of his life, if you asked him who he was, he would answer without hesitation that he was a philosopher. Papa never stopped asking questions. Papa never stopped learning. He was always on the lookout for the next puzzle he could wrestle until he not only had unraveled it himself, but could walk others through his intricacies. He took and taught philosophy classes at local colleges deep into his 80s, looking at material with fresh eyes every single time. He never took an idea, concept, or truth for granted. In his endless journey for knowledge, he demonstrated a humility we would all be well served to emulate. During my last semester of undergrad, with the end nearing and anxiety levels rising, Papa helped me research and outline a particularly difficult paper. He edited many of the others. I would not have crossed the finish line without him. After I graduated, we discussed my future plans over and over again, where he questioned me on each and every aspect. He was not seeking control or casting doubt, but ensuring that I had truly gone deep inside of myself, that I had to do what I was setting out to do, that I would find meaning and purpose in my path. Once again, we looked at the puzzle and solved it together. I learned of Papa's passing immediately after my first class for the class on Monday. As I sat in that first class, I was overwhelmed with the feeling that this was exactly where I belonged, what I had to do, and where I needed to be. In the second class, with the new knowledge of Papa's death, I was overwhelmed with the realization that I would not have gotten to this place of peace and certainty without him. To have Papa pass on that day, with me secure on my new path, and Rachel also beginning school, is an act of what some might call God. Papa was the type of person you could ask about death and know he wouldn't flinch. In our conversations over the past year, Papa told me that he had accepted a fear of the physical process of dying and accepted his life. This acceptance, Papa said, allowed him to have no fear of death. He was a man without regret, comfortable in the home he built within himself, in the myriad of homes that were his built for the rest of us. When he died, he told me, he would not be thinking of what if or what could have been. In death, he would be at peace. As we remember and grieve, Papa tells us to turn inwards and accept our fear so that we can find what we must do and trust the meaning that follows. As Rilke wrote, try to raise up the sunken humans of this enormous past. Our personalities will grow stronger, our solitude will expand and become a place where we can live in the twilight. With Papa's tutelage, today I too am at peace. Thank you.
It's really a bargain to go in between Ty and Rabbi Black. Just want to thank all of you for being here. As I watched you all file in, I felt a sense of comfort. So, I want to thank Rabbi Black and Peter Sachs. I think we would be here at this moment without them either. They become very meaningful to our family and to our lives. In the middle of the night last night, I had an imaginary conversation with my dad, Irwin. I said, Dad, I'm having a little trouble focusing on what to say at the funeral. He asked, well, isn't Rabbi Black giving the eulogy? I said, yes, Dad, Rabbi Black is giving the eulogy. Dad says, good, that Rabbi Black, he does good work. And then he says, and Karen Sachs, will she be there? She's a good teacher. I said, yes, Dad, Rabbi Black is giving the eulogy. Karen Sachs will be her usual busy self. And Ty and Rachel are going to speak. He said, oh, that's good. My grandchildren like me. I said, so Dad, back to the reason for my imaginary call. I thought I would say just a few words from us kids about the things you taught us. You know, get good grades, go to religious school, go to Jewish summer camp, have a bar mitzvah, do a budget, work hard, work harder, do another budget, have a profession, give back to the community, show up for your family, help your kids when they need you, help your clients and your employees, even when your clients and employees don't like the answer. You know, Dad, all the stuff that you taught us. But I only have a few minutes to speak, Dad, which is unlike me, so is there one thing in particular in this long list of things you taught us that I might focus on today? He said, Gary, let's back up and reframe the issue. Anything but reframing the issue. He not only doesn't give you the answer when he reframes the issue, he's challenging your question. And then he says, I think the real issue here is this. What is the purpose of a eulogy at a funeral? Gary, we will not succeed unless we know why we are doing what it is we are doing. And then it hits me. I know this game, and I'm pretty good at it. It's an agonizing game, but there is usually a nugget of wisdom in the end. You just have to be patient, play along, and look for it. So I say, okay, Dad, I'll play. I will think about the purpose of the eulogy, and I will call you back. So I get up in the middle of the night, this part is not imaginary, and do the thing we amateurs do when we have to prepare it to our Torah. I seek out Google. I seek out Google and I type, what is the purpose of a eulogy at a funeral? There it is, right there in the Torah. Genesis 23:2. Abraham, the first Jew, came to eulogize his wife Sarah and to cry for her. He took a Greek detour to look up the verb to eulogize in the dictionary. It means to praise. Maybe I should have started with the dictionary. And I see one more reference, Samuel 2:21:1. The Jewish people were punished with famine for not giving King Saul a respectful eulogy. Okay, I get it. Sort of a middle of the night kind of way. God takes eulogies seriously. That's why Rabbi Black is doing. So I call my dad back in an imaginary way, feeling pretty good about myself, also in an imaginary way, and I cited the text. And I told him, it's been our tradition for over 5,000 years. 5,000 years is something we say sometimes when a client comes in. We say, what does it mean? Besides the best line, I said 5,000 years of Jewish wisdom. So I told him it's been our tradition for over 5,000 years to give both praise and to grieve for our lost loved ones. My dad says, yes, that is what the text says. But what about the commentary? This is a very true story, despite it being imaginary. This is just the way he lived. Just the important part, so pay attention. He says, Gary, are we really here? If he were speaking out of that casket, this is what he would say. Are we really here just to praise and grieve? Are we not here to honor the departed? Are we not here to comfort the souls who are listening to your talk? Maybe we are here to comfort my soul, he says. Not my soul, but his soul. And then my head almost exploded, but not in such an imaginary way. I wasn't sure what I was going to say today. So just in the nick of time, I realized what the nugget of wisdom was, or is, the nugget that saves your head from exploding after an hour with my father. He would tell you what it is, but I'll tell you. It's a nugget I already knew. It's this. The answer to your question will come if you ask the right question. And if, and only if, you put the work in. If you ask the right question, and if and only if you put the work in, you might arrive at the answer. It's not as important to arrive at the answer. It's important to ask the right question and put the work in. I say this. Now that's the next paragraph. A dad's true mentor, true God. He never gives you the answer. And he never accepts the quick answer as the right one. That was the way he taught. I say this, not only thinking of our family, but also the employees of our firm who are all here. Even the farm employees are here. And I say that with thinking about the clients that are here as well. He never made it easy on us. He wanted us to be independent, he wanted us to be stronger, as Cantor says. He believed in godliness as a reinterpretation of God. And we are stronger from his presence, and from your presence too. Stronger from your presence. And there is godliness that runs between us. And Irwin was part of that. Our family takes care of each other. And our friends take care of each other. And our firm, at our firm, we take care of each other. And our firm takes care of its clients. No excuses ever. So, as we go back on our way, after this period of mourning, may that strength and godliness that he embodied stay with us.
Thank you, Gary, Ty, and Rachel, for those perfect words. Encapsulate such a remarkable soul. Dear Carol, dear Susan, Daniel, Allie, and Gary, and Amy, Rachel, and Ty, and Miranda, and Nicole, and Kale, and Ted and Nicole, and Chloe and Carter, and Mary Jane, and Gala and Esther, and family, and friends, all. Rabbinic sage Rabbi Ben Zoma says in the Mishnah, Tractate Pirkei Avot, chapter 4, section 1, Ezehu Chacham, Halomed Mikol Adam, Ezehu Ashir Sameach Bechelko, Ezehu Mechubad Amechabed Et Habriot, who is wise, the one who learns from everyone, who is rich, who's satisfied with what he has. Who's honored? The one who honors everyone. And in so many ways, Dan Zoma's words reflect the character, the values, the wisdom, and the power of Irwin Wagner's remarkable life. Is Chacham, who is wise, the one who learns from everyone. As we all know, he was a brilliant man, a deep thinker, a man of convictions and conscience. He possessed a wisdom born of intellectual curiosity and a deep desire to explore the many ways that our lives are intertwined with nature, with faith, with our ability to learn, grow, and question the myriad mysteries presented to all humanity. He both learned from and taught everyone with whom he came in contact. Ezehu Ashir, who was rich, one who was satisfied with what he has. By any measure, Irwin was very successful. He was a brilliant accountant with an international reputation for hard work and excellence. He was a pioneer in the field of wealth management, whose wisdom and advice was sought out by so many here, and those who understood his remarkable ability to foresee trends, opportunities, and pitfalls before they became part of our daily life. He was just as happy reading a book or studying Torah as he was evaluating a business or creating a budget, which he imprinted on all of you. Wealth was a means to an end, not an end in and of itself. Ezehu Mechubad is honored, the one who honors everyone. Irwin was the backbone of the Reconstructionist Jewish community here in Denver. He and a handful of friends created a community that has stood the test of time and continues to inspire so many, but he never sought out the limelight, not for his work with the Reconstructionist community or any of his good deeds in the community. He avoided it. His passion was not for self-aggrandizement, but rather to share his gifts and help others to reap the rewards of his labor. Irwin was a builder and a teacher. He was a scholar of Torah and a seeker of truth. He was a loving husband, brother, grandfather, father, whose legacy of commitment and caring has inspired, as we saw so incredibly beautifully, his children and grandchildren to follow in his footsteps of involvement. Yeah, he could be stubborn at times. He was simultaneously gentle and firm. He had extraordinarily high standards and did not suffer fools gladly. But he was also passionate about making the world a better place. He was born in 1937 in Cambridge, Massachusetts, the son of Esther and Sylvan Wagner, who raised Irwin and his two sisters in a religious home that stressed the importance of hard work and family. His sisters Mary, Jean, and Charlotte died tragically when she was 6 years old, an event that had a lifelong impact on the family. Lived a life of tradition, of service, of learning, of love. When he was a baby, the family moved to Chicago to join in the family furniture business. They lived on the south side of Hyde Park, where he learned to be a White Sox fan on the north side. But okay. But if the White Sox were out of town and the north side Cubs were playing, he would go to the friendly confines of Wrigley Field and root for the Cubbies. It didn't matter. He was kicked out of public school because sometimes his passion for baseball and alternative activities took him away from his schooling, but the truth is he was bored. And when he went to the laboratory school of the University of Chicago, he found his intellectual source. He went to the University of Michigan and then Ann Arbor, where he got a degree in accounting. And while he was in high school, he attended Camp Ramah in Eagle River, Wisconsin, a place where Carol, you shared with us, you could only speak Hebrew or you wouldn't eat because you had to ask for your dinner in Hebrew. And it was there that he met a beautiful young woman from the north side named Carol Cone. Carol, you didn't like him at first. You wore a fish t-shirt and he had braces. But he grew on you. And later, when he was a counselor at Camp Menominee up in Wisconsin, he used to sneak out and visit Carol when she was a counselor at Camp Vermont. Carol, you were a student at Brandeis, and he would get in his car, leave Friday after school, drive all the way to Boston, spend Friday night and Saturday with her, be back Sunday night so we could attend class on Monday. They were married in Chicago on December 22nd, 1957, the ripe age of 20 years old. Carol, you transferred to Michigan and you rented a house there together as married young students. After graduation, you briefly moved back to Chicago and worked for the family furniture business, but soon after he moved with his father Sylvan to Denver to continue in the furniture business, but then realized he didn't want to be in that family business. So he went to work for Arthur Henderson as a CPA. He became a partner and the chairman of the tax division, first Jewish partner here in Denver. He finished his career in Atlanta as the international head of tax methodology for the entire Arthur Henderson company. He only worked for 35 years at Arthur Henderson. And then he began his second career as a financial planner here in Denver, Wagner Wealth Management. He was the founder and visionary, as you heard from Gary so beautifully. In the mid-90s, starting your own investment firm wasn't that usual. It was revolutionary. The idea that you could create a firm just to help people with their own money. And Irwin was not into the details. He was a big picture guy. He left the details to others. He helped so many. Gary, you have continued in his footsteps. Irwin and Carol had a long and beautiful marriage. They loved each other deeply. You always agreed on the big things, but rarely on the little things. Every 3 weeks, the family took off and went camping, tent camping, all over the West. And no matter what, you would stay outside, even if it was raining, except for 1 year, it was raining and you went to a hotel and watched Nixon resign, which was a good thing. You traveled all over the world together, Carol. To China, Vietnam, Taiwan, Israel, Europe. You went on river cruises. You went to South America, to Canada, to Russia. Played bridge. You went to the symphony. You lived a full life together, enjoying it with family and friends. Together, as I alluded to earlier, you founded the Colorado Jewish Reconstructionist Movement here in Denver in 1965. A small group of families creating two chavurot, groups of family, purposefully. It shouldn't be just one. It should be lay-led, chavurah-driven, not clergy. You pioneered the concept of creative services here in Denver, lay-led. You didn't only belong to the Reconstructionist chavurah, you also belonged to Rosh Shalom because you wanted to go to services every week, monthly, with chavurah. And because of the way, Carol, that you and Irwin raised your children, they can walk into any synagogue anywhere in the world with comfort. And that extended family of that Reconstructionist chavurah was such an important part of their lives. All the family, all the children grew up together. We've heard about Irwin as a father. And I think each of the three kids had different relationships with him. Susan, he was your protector. He was always there for you. He cleared out snakes that you encountered in the field behind your house. Said he taught you to be a rule follower. When you were upset with a call, but the umpire made it one of your games, your dad would tell you no, the referee was right. Follow him all the time. He taught all of his children the importance of being part of the community. He was a wonderful role model for Jewish life. The Shabbat table, where those wonderful conversations took place every Friday night. The kosher home you shared, the Jewish camps, Camp Ramah Ranch Camp, Camp Barney Levin's in Atlanta. Up to start the Solomon Schechter Jewish Day School in Atlanta when they were there. He impressed you all upon you with the values of hard work, of showing up, of doing the right thing. Irwin was not a helicopter dad. He set goals for you, he had high standards for you, and he expected you to meet them. He goes into the detail. If you needed him, he was there. But the life lessons he taught you was how to be self-sufficient. Except, of course, with baseball. He taught you how to keep score, how to analyze the game, how to see the game, the intricacies of the game. He loved it because it was such a metaphor for life. There were so many different levels you could dig and see it. He knew them all. Baseball was like a religion to him. He loved the rules, the tradition, the competition, the drama. He passed that along to his grandchildren as well. He loved his grandchildren, but as we've learned so beautifully, he was not a traditional grandfather. He enjoyed being with you. He enjoyed challenging you, being challenged by you. But he wasn't obsessed with you. He loved talking with you about the world. He didn't like babies. When you grew up, then that was his joy. He took each of you on a trip for your mitzvah. You each had your own unique relationship with them. He could be irreverent and witty, childish and playful. And you, grandchildren, brought out that impishness in him, that gleam in his eye that was so delightful to see, that we all knew about. I feel very blessed to have been one of his teachers and one of his students. We had many important talks, and he always taught me something. Whenever he was there, I knew I had to up my game, because he would ask me questions and call me out, things if I didn't. Ezehu chacham alamein mikol adam, ezehu hashir hasamech b'chavko, ezehu mechubad mechabed habriyot. Who is wise? The one who learns from everyone. Who is rich? The one who is satisfied with what he has. Who is honored? Honors everyone. Irwin Wagner. With the life of the mind, a life of the community, a life of love. And we are all better because we knew him. We are all saddened by his loss. May his legacy, may his teaching, may his questions inspire all of us to live our lives to the fullest and to make our world a better place. Let us all say amen. Take a few more moments now to silent prayer. In the memory of Irwin Wagner, you are among us as a blessing. In your own time, O God, when we too are called to enter eternity, may we leave this life secure in the faith that in your life we shall see life. In life and in death we cannot go where you are not, where you are, hope endures. So sustained by this assurance, we invoke your name, Almighty God, as we rise now as we are people with the hail and away.
I'm staying home.
Passionate God, eternal spirit of the universe, your perfect rest in your sheltering presence. The Irwin Wagner was entered eternity. God of mercy, let him find shelter and refuge in the shadow of your wings. And let his soul be bound up in the bond of everlasting life. God is his inheritance. May he rest in peace. And let us all say, friends, the family has asked us to announce that they will be receiving Shiva and condolence calls of Dr. Carol Wagner at the residences at the Four Seasons, which is a separate entrance from the hotel. That's on 1133 14th Street in Denver. Free parking has been arranged by the family. Thursday after the internment until 8 p.m. there will be a minion service tonight at 7 o'clock p.m. In addition, the family plans on attending Shabbat services tomorrow night, Friday, here at Temple Emmanuel, and will be available for condolences immediately following the services as well. Again, for those who are watching online, if this was not the best stream, it will be on the Philbin or YouTube page as soon as our internet is restored.
Ladies and gentlemen, that doesn't include our service here at Temple Emmanuel. We will have burial at Emmanuel Cemetery. We do have an escorted procession today. So first we'll ask you to remain in your places as we escort the family and the casket to the cars. And then we'll ask you to return to your cars as quickly as possible. If you wish to join us in the procession, we'll ask you to have your headlights on, your hazards on. We're going to use the southeast exit of the synagogue's parking lot. If you're not going to the procession, if we can ask you to give way to those who are, and if we can ask you to use the northeast exit of the parking lot. One last favor to ask is if you run into the family, if they're using the restroom in the hallway or something, please allow them the opportunity to do what they need to do, and then so they can get back on their way to the cemetery. I'd like to invite the pallbearers forward at this time.
Nairobi, Lord Sar, Desha Yarbitsini, Leni, Nafshi Shove, Yancheni B'Ma'at Leitzedek, Shalom.
גם כי אלך בגיא צלמוות ורע ירתה עמדי. שבתך ומשענתך המה ינחמוני, תערוך לפניי שולחן נגד צונאיי. נשמת בשמן ראשי, כוסי רוויה. אך טוב החסד מבפנים. שבתי בבית אדוני. God is my shepherd. God leads me by down pastures. Beside the waters and restores my soul. My path will take the name. When I walk in the valley of the shadow of death, I shall fear no evil. You are with me. God is naturally trusted. And keep before you in the presence of my enemies. When I see my